Happy Shut Your Ass Up Saturday. You already know the assignment. Pretty simple. Keep the petty on high heat. And if somebody starts talking that silly shit, it's shut your ass up. Petty-luya.
Yes, in that order. You know, we got to keep it live at 5. Anywho, welcome everybody. Just a quick morning update, honey. Guess who's coming to dinner? It looks like, listen, y'all. Now, listen, hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me grab my coffee. Let me grab my coffee for this. Hold on. Now, here's my thing. Here's my thing. United States versus Combs. Now, you've had 7 weeks. 7 weeks, 34. How many witnesses? 34 witnesses to get it together. To get it together. Now, you're supposed to have the best of the best of the best assigned to this case. You've had enough time to prep, to comb through, to fact check all of those witnesses. You mean to tell me we got to week 7 just for you to discover that you needed to trim down the fat off the meat? It took you 7 weeks to come to the conclusion that, you know what, let me go ahead and drop 3 of these charges and just hone in on what I feel like could be more of a solidified charge, of a more solidified statute, or of a more of a solidified case. Y'all don't come out the box with your best the first time around. Because let me tell you I know public opinion doesn't matter, but it does matter if you look at it from the lens of the juror. The juror is the public. The juror is the everyday person. And unfortunately, there's no such thing as a perfect juror. Do you understand what I'm saying? Although the judge may do his best to issue instructions to the jury, hey, listen, when you go home, don't talk about the case. Don't look at anything on social media. If you see anything, scroll by. Listen, have you ever gone on a diet before? Now, before you went on a diet, right? You really weren't thinking about McDonald's. You really weren't thinking about Whataburger. But as soon as you go on a diet, you think about all of the things you could have, should have, want to eat, could eat. Same thing with that concept. You must be crazy if you think those jurors are not scrolling through social media. Now, here's the dangers of that. Here's the dangers of it. It creates doubt. Because if it's creating doubt in my mind, and then you have an imperfect juror that's going to look anyway, they're going to look anyway, right? We can assume that probably about 75% of the jury is probably going to look. And if I'm like, you don't have a strong case, what do you think those jurors are going to think? It doesn't matter the legal part because they're not legal experts. The jurors are not legal experts. And at the end of the day, the jurors are the ones that make what? The final decision. And I feel like this is a huge, I'm not going to call it a mistake. I feel like the government, let me think the word I'm trying to use. I feel like the government has lost a little bit of footing in this case. I think they've lost a little bit of footing, right? From a perspective of a juror. But we're going to get into it, and then we're going to talk about it. As a matter of fact, let me get my notes out, because Alexandra Shapiro did a great job yesterday, right? As it relates to arguing Rule 29 and poking holes in statutes that she felt were overbroad. And one thing that she stated as she was running down her rebuttals in the courthouse yesterday to the judge, and also just kind of poking holes through the case of the government, she said, you cannot try this case based on assumption, based on subjectiveness. And some of the primary facets that you're relying on is Jane Doe's testimony, and she was very subjective with what she thought he meant, what she thought he felt. And unfortunately, y'all, you can't send somebody to prison on, I assume this is what he meant. Also with Mia, and I'm going to get that out, and we're going to go through that. So let me get my notes, and then we're going to read the letter to the court from which the government issued, and we're going to go from there. And I'm just going to see what y'all are talking about in the chat. Give me just a couple of seconds, and we're going to get started. The first part of this review, or the first part of this segment, probably the first 20 minutes, it's going to be technical, okay? It's going to be technical. And then we're going to get into the fluff and the entertainment of it all. Give me 2 seconds. All right. All right, here we go. Here we go. Hold on, y'all. Here we go. But listen, over here, we've been saying it. We've been saying, look, don't come out. We've been leading. Now, we may not be as strong. I'm not going to say strong. We are strong over here. We may not be a large platform, but we've been saying since day one. First of all, before I get into the thick of it, we've been saying since day one, Diddy is not the main guy. Diddy is not the main guy that they're after. If you've been following me, then you know that. Here we go. Let's get started. And we're going to get into all of that. All right. Dear Judge, and I don't know how to say his name. It's RE United States versus Combs. Hold on. United States versus Combs. Dear Judge Subramanian. And please excuse me if I pronounce his name incorrectly. The government respectfully writes disregarding its requested edits to the court's proposed jury instructions. The government understands the court's desire for streamlined instructions. With that in mind, the government has suggested ways to streamline those instructions. Specifically, the government has removed instructions from the charge relating to, number 1, attempted kidnapping under both California and New York law. Number 2, attempted arson under California law, and aiding and abetting sex trafficking. There you go. So they've removed those charges. Attempted kidnapping of Capricorn Clark under California and New York law. Attempted arson as it relates to Kid Cudi's car under California and New York under California law, and aiding and abetting sex trafficking. Let's get it. I'm going to finish this, but let me tell you some of the beautiful arguments, right? This is Team Nobody, but the defense did their thing yesterday. And some of the beautiful arguments that Shapiro made is the question of relevancy versus sufficiency. And what she talked about, let's talk about sex trafficking, right? One of those claims that they've removed. She said Jane's subjectiveness is relevant, but it's not sufficient. It's relevant, right, to some of the things that she did and that she and Mr. Combs engaged in, but it's not sufficient enough to be able to 100% eliminate any reasonable doubt because it was subjective. Now, if you go back to some of the previous segments we've done, remember when I covered some of the text messages and directly the government and the defense asked Jane, if you didn't want to do the Freakoffs or quote unquote hotel night, how come you just didn't say it? And Jane's statement was, I wanted him to read between the lines. I was hoping that he could tell by my facial expressions that I was uncomfortable. I was hoping that he could tell that I wanted to go on vacation. I was hoping that he would read between the lines that I was tired of remaining in the hotel and just eating, at Nobu restaurant within the hotel. I wanted to go out to try different restaurants. And he didn't read between the lines. They also talked about November 2023 when Jane contacted Diddy and she texted Diddy and Diddy was saying, this was after Cassie's lawsuit dropped. Jane reached out to Diddy, right? Because at that time he had put her on ice for about 90 days. They hadn't talked. They officially broke up, meaning no more hotel nights and or freak-offs with him, because at this time, I have to keep it up. Look, we're going to keep it real over here, because during this time, he had a different roster. Gina was on the roster, Jesse was on the roster, and also Young Miami. So he really didn't need to put up with the back and forth. He and Jane would argue a lot because Jane wanted more intimate time, more date time. She wanted to feel more like a relationship. So after Cassie's lawsuit dropped, Jane actually reached out to Diddy. And they had a text message exchange. Then they had a 40-minute conversation, and they had an additional 20-minute conversation. In those two conversations, without Jane's knowledge, Diddy actually recorded her. And it looks like that could have been a very good move on his side as it relates to legal evidence, right? Because he's basically saying, I need your friendship. This, you know me better than anybody. I need your friendship. I just need you to support me. And what they're saying, this is not intimidation. Jane felt that Diddy was saying, I need you to, uh, possibly, if this shit gets out of hand, testify on my behalf. I'm going to take care of you. Oh, they also said Jane also felt like Diddy was saying, if you do this, then we're still good with the house. And what Shapiro was saying is, but he didn't say that. And in order for it to be intimidation, racketeering, or some type of a crime, he has to say, if you don't do A and B, then this is what's going to happen. So that's what she means by the question of relevancy versus sufficiency. Okay. And what she was arguing is the government cannot rely on subjectivity to establish sex trafficking / racketeering. You can't. And then she also talked about the green card element to build. You cannot use the green card element to build a weak theory. She said the government didn't even think about charging Diddy with sex trafficking until they became aware of a single act, which was a physical altercation on June 18, 2024, between Diddy and Jane Doe. And so what Alexandra was saying, listen, you knew what it was. You knew they had a very, very sexually explicit relationship between 2021 and 2024. And based on everything she told you in those meetings with the feds, you never even thought about bringing up sex trafficking charges on him until she got to the part, that one incident where they got into a physical altercation. But up until then, you didn't even think you had a case. So what you're trying to do is tie this single incident into a RICO and racketeering case, and it's weak at best, okay? Now, for those of you that are not familiar with this single altercation that I'm referring to, I've covered it in the past. On June 18th, 2024, 7 months after Cassie's lawsuit dropped, Jane initiated physical violence between she and Sean Combs. She testified under oath about this. She initiated, she was the aggressor. That is correct. Now, I am not making any excuses for any man to go full throttle on a woman. Let me put that disclaimer out there. But it's important to me in the way I run my channel that I give you all of the facts about what happened, when it happened, how it started, who finished it, who got the worst part of that deal, right? So 7 months after Cassie's lawsuit dropped, Jane Doe, 7 months from start to finish, initiated physical violence towards Sean Combs. Initially, after a few hours, he did respond with physical violence. Now let's back up. Cassie's lawsuit dropped, I do believe, November 16th, 2023, if I'm correct. In December of 2023, both the government and the defense presented as evidence Jane began to keep a journal, which the defense argued this was very strategic. You were documenting because you had your own agenda and you possibly were going to create a scenario so that you can get millions of dollars, right? Which Jane denied. But in December 2023, 1 month after Cassie's lawsuit dropped, 3 years after Jane has been with Diddy, Jane starts to document how I'm very uncomfortable. I am now discovering that I'm being sexually exploited. This is horrible. I don't want to do this. I never wanted to do this. Blah, 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 blah. Not to minimize anything that she's saying, but you have to go back and watch the videos. At that point, in addition to documenting in her in her journal, she reaches out to Diddy and she says, listen, and they have the audio. This is horrible. I feel horrible. I can't believe this is my story. And Diddy responds to her, what do you need me to do to make you feel better? I didn't know you were feeling this way. I thought we were two consenting adults that was just freaky. I had no idea over the past 3 years that you didn't even want to do this. That's when he was like, that's cool. You don't have to do it. That's fine. What do you need me to do to make you feel better? How can I help you? A day or two later, maybe a few hours later, Jane responds to Diddy and she says, I need you to compensate me for my time. I need $100,000 for each year that I've been with you. That would make 3 years. So right there, that's 300,000. And then I need you to pay me for the remainder of the love contract in the amount of $150,000. So Jane, in total, asked him to pay her $450,000 in December. December passes, January passes, February, March, April, May passes. Then we get to June. In June, Diddy goes to Jane's home to set up a Freakoff. Jane was still upset regarding a video that she saw of Diddy a month ago in November for his birthday, that she saw him in Young Miami on a family trip in Colorado, and they were skiing. And I believe what triggered her is that Young Miami's child or children were there with Diddy and his family. And then she did not get that type of treatment. And that evening, as they began to drink and consume alcohol and drugs, she became upset. She testified under oath as he bent down to do what? To tie his shoe. With all her might, her words, not mine, she slammed his damn head into a marble countertop, proceeded to throw glass and candles at him, attempted to leave the home. That's when we hear about the part of him kicking the doors, the 4 doors down, right? After she initiated the violence, she was yelling to him, you need to leave. You need to get out of here. She goes to her room. She goes to the bathroom. She goes to the closet. That's 4 doors he kicked down. She managed to get away from him after he grabbed her, right? Had her in somewhat of a chokehold. And she managed to get out of it, left the home for a few hours, she said, and hid. She didn't have a phone or anything to really tell the time. So she estimated she had been gone for approximately 2 hours. She returns back to the home. He's still there, right? When she comes in, they asked her, what did you do when you came back and he was still there? She testified under oath, I punched him in his face. Then what happened? Then I ran out to the patio. Then what happened? He followed me. What happened when he followed you? He was screaming at me saying, I have 7 kids, I do believe. I have 7 kids, and you're trying to send me to jail and make sure I don't get to see any of them. At that point, he proceeds to physically attack her. She testified that she kind of huddled down in a ball to cover her face. He was screaming obscenities at her, hitting her, attacking her. I don't know, Carl. I think the drugs. Can I be honest with you? From both parties, I think the drugs. Now, this is not an excuse for either one of them. This is because nobody, listen, don't put your damn hands on me. Don't put your hands on me. You get what I'm saying? And that's why you got to watch who you get high with, who you smoke with, who you drink with, because everybody can't control their alcohol. Now, here's the thing. Diddy, you have a history. You have a history of becoming physically violent with women. Even if we don't count Cassie, even if we don't count Jane, we can at least do a courtesy bow to Kim Porter. Do you get what I'm saying? So it doesn't matter, to be honest. Let me just tell you how people look at this, and I'm going to give you the bias of it all. It doesn't matter in most cases, public opinion, especially to people that cannot stand this man, that she initiated and she was the aggressor based on what? his previous and prior history towards women before Cassie came, because there is a history of physical violence that cannot be denied. He did break Kim Porter's nose in San Tropez, okay, and had a doctor flown in to treat her on that boat. I remember that long time ago. So because of that, most people, thank you, Carl. He says, I agree. And because of that, it don't matter if she would have slammed the whole fucking counter on top of his head. The fact that he hit her back, and based on his prior and previous history with women, it's a done deal, right? Okay. Can we all agree? From the outside looking in, whether you're team Diddy or team whomever, or if you're not, team whatever, just based on his own history. So then he's screaming at her, right? You're trying to send me to jail. I have these kids. What are you doing? You trying to, and at this point, keep in mind, Diddy was already under federal investigation, not to be confused with the restitution, the $20 million restitution he had previously paid Cassie. At this point, he was under federal investigation, number one, for tampering with witnesses. Do y'all remember? This is when everybody was coming out talking. Don Richard was talking. Selena was talking from she was, and there was, now the feds were kind of closing in and watching him very closely, because people were reporting there were attempts to what? Intimidate the witnesses and or influence their testimony in a federal trial. At this point, on June 18, 2024, Jane Doe had already established a relationship with the federal government. Jane Doe had already, what do y'all call it? I don't want to say hired. When you get an attorney, what's the proper word? Not hire, but what's the proper word? My mind just in English. She had already hired an attorney, but I was trying to be a little bit more sophisticated. So she's already working with the feds. She has an attorney. She has retained. Thank you, Mocha Pam. She had already retained an attorney. The problem, and one of the reasons I feel like the government had to go ahead and drop one of those claims, is because there was a lot of subjectiveness. Was it relevant? Some of the things she said? Absolutely. Absolutely. But is it sufficient for the jurors to charge him with? Absolutely not. Right? Because if she felt in danger, she was connected to the feds. And not only that, she continued a sexual relationship with Mr. Combs. Now, this is not I'm just telling y'all all of the evidence that has been entered into court that's factual. She continued a sexual relationship with Mr. Combs, okay? Now, Shapiro also argued interstate commerce. She said there's no strong evidence that every time Diddy got an escort that they were strictly paid for sex versus their time. Basically, she's saying, prove it. Prove it. Because at one point when Diddy was working with the modeling agency for Cowboys for Angels that actually recruits and hires these models for entertainment, and Diddy had an issue with the performance of one of the entertainers, and he mentioned sex. The lady came back in an email and was like, what you talking about? We don't hire out people for sex. You're paying for their time. So that was actually a leverage and a benefit for the defense, because they're saying, listen, prove that he paid for sex, even though we know he did now. We know that's what they were doing. But you have to prove that these men were actually prostitutes. And what Shapiro argued is both Cassie Ventura and Jane Doe testified under oath that these were entertainers. They never referred to them as prostitutes in the transcripts. And she cited that evidence under testimony. Very, very good argument on the behalf of the defense. Now, for those of you that are new here, I cover both sides. If the government does a good job, we gonna celebrate. If the defense does a good job, we gonna celebrate. We marvel at the brilliance in the courtroom on the behalf of the defense and also on the behalf of the government and the prosecution, right? These are the best of the best in the field. So we don't have any qualms with saying who did good and who needs some work to do. Let me go back. Okay. Let's go back to the prosecution's letter to the judge. Now, specifically, the government has removed instructions from the charge relating to attempted kidnapping under both California and New York law, number one. Number two, attempted arson under California law. And the third one, aiding and abetting sex trafficking. So they kicked the Capricorn Clark kidnapping out. They kicked the arson out as it relates to Kid Cudi and aiding and abetting sex trafficking. The government is no longer planning to proceed on these theories of liability, so instructions are no longer necessary for the jury. The government has also attempted to simplify the language relating to count one, a proposal as explained in the government's comment bubbles that the government hopes not only serves the purposes of streamlining the instructions, but will also avoid any confusion as to the operative agreement for count one. Number one, sex trafficking and forced labor instructions. While the government has taken seriously the court's desire for brevity, the government still strongly believes that certain limited additional instructions on sex trafficking and forced labor instructions, which are regularly given in sex trafficking and forced labor trials in the circuit, are necessary for the juror to adequately understand the law on these charges. Each of these instructions reflect established case law and are directly relevant to key issues in the case. Moreover, without such instructions, the government has serious concerns that the jury may misunderstand the applicable law for both charges, which are extremely complex legal concepts about which jurors may have preconceived mistaken notions. That's why I said, I believe it's too much. And so they're trimming off the fat. It's too much. Remember, you're not a legal eagle. I'm not a legal eagle, and neither are the jurors. What are we saying? Should the jurors represent you, me, and you? You got to make it make sense. If there's any reasonable doubt, I'm talking about any, it's a done deal. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? Now we're talking about how do we simplify? And that's what the government is attempting to do right here in this communication to the judge, saying, let's go back, hold on. We need to become more streamlined because we recognize that this could pose some type of complexities which the jurors may have preconceived mistaken notions. Let's go to the government has listed the precedent for each of these instructions and its comments to the forced labor and sex trafficking sections of the request to charge. To avoid repeating that law and precedent here, the government limits the below largely to providing the government's reasons why, based on the particular facts and issues in this case, these additional instructions are necessary. Number one, let me take a sip of my coffee. They're talking about sex trafficking and forced labor, requested instruction. Earlier consent, not determinative. Due to the particular facts of this case, the government believes that it's imperative that the court inform the jury that prior consensual sex activity is not determinative of whether a victim was sex trafficked. Let me put this in the chat for you so you can read it yourself, okay? Because I know some of you have to see it so that you can understand it. You see it right here? Due to particular facts. And some of the facts are, it was consensual, according to the women that took the stand. You can't ignore that in a court of law. Both Cassie Ventura and both Jane Doe testified they enjoyed the Freakoffs. Jane's words, descriptive adjectives were, it was exhilarating. I loved it. In text messages, they would express their fulfillment, their content, their happiness, their euphoria for the engagement. And at one time, Jane actually began to form her own relationships with one of the escorts that she found attractive. And she testified under oath that she made love to him. She made love to him. In addition to that, Jane Doe also testified that she attended a Freakoff with another rapper, and in exchange for her attendance, she received in the amount $9,000 from a rapper that was listed under the placebo name Bear, alias Bear. Okay, let's continue. Okay, due to the particular facts of the case, the government believes that it's imperative that the court informs the jury that, listen, we know they testified that it was consensual. However, that does not mean they are not victims. It goes on and it continues to say, as the court is well aware, the facts of this case involve instances of trafficking of Jane Doe and Miss Ventura that follow instances of consensual sex activity, a topic that is likely to be discussed extensively by both parties during closing arguments. And it is Second Circuit law that earlier periods of consensual activity do not preclude a finding of trafficking as to later activity involving a victim. Let's pause. Let me read it again. The Second Circuit law that earlier periods of consensual activity do not preclude a finding of trafficking as to later activity involving a victim. Do you, before we go on to the second one, do you feel like they will be able to charge and convince the jury that even though these women gave consent and testified under oath, they did indeed consent? Do you feel that the jury will find Sean Combs guilty of sex trafficking under these instructions and forced labor? Yes or no? And then we're going to move on to the next bullet. The same is true for, the document reads, the same is true for forced labor. The government's forced labor theory focuses on 4 victims, Cassie and Jane, with regard to their participation in freak-offs or hotel nights, and Mia and Capricorn Clark, with regard to their employment for the defendant. Similarly to sex trafficking, Cassie and Jane's prior consensual sexual activities do not preclude a finding that later non-consensual sex acts are forced labor. Okay? Is everybody clear what's going on here? It goes on to say, nor and an instruction in which the court indicated that the jury need not attach any real significance to witnesses' inability to identify the defendant. In addition, the government strongly objects to the defendant's apparent claim that this court should not instruct the jury on well-established legal principles as to thorny questions of law because they are unbalanced and may help the jury reach a verdict. The government, just as the defendant, is entitled to legally accurate instructions about what its burden is and is not. And there is no real dispute over the fact that these proposed additional instructions are routinely given in this court, are legally accurate, and would help inform the jury as to the law on key issues in this case. While the defense may want the jury to be confused on certain of, they're getting dirty, y'all. Hold on now. While the defense may want the jury to be confused on certain of these issues with the hope that the confusion will result in a mistaken assumptions in their favor, there is no authority for omitting jury instructions on that basis. Let's take a pause. That's page 2. It looks like some of this is a bit choppy. Does the fact that Mia and Capricorn willingly took jobs with the defendant preclude a finding that both at some point were forced to work? Now, what they're leaning on when they say forced to work, what they're talking about is both Capricorn Clark and Mia testified under oath that there were long hours. That, when you work for Diddy, it's very long hours of work. Is that enough if you're thinking like a jury to prove forced labor, forced to work? Let me tell you what Shapiro was able to argue yesterday. Give me 1 second. Let me go back to my notes. Forced labor. So she addressed forced labor under racketeering. She's saying that Shapiro argued that it's insufficient. There was no use of force. There was no physical restraint. There was no physical harm. And they were never forced to remain they were never forced to remain in employment. And they could have simply left and to find work elsewhere. That's what Shapiro argued on yesterday. Listen, force my ass is what she's saying. Who forced who? Ain't nobody forced them to work. This is not, I'm breaking it down, right? In layman's terms. Your Honor, they could have left. There was no threat. If you leave, I'm going to break your arm. If you leave, I'm coming to your house. There was none of that. As a matter of fact, the only punishment was, I'm going to fire you. Shapiro argued that these are perfectly healthy, able-bodied women who were capable of finding work elsewhere. Watch this. Let me tell you how bad the defense was yesterday. She said both Capricorn and Mia, Your Honor, actually left when they wanted to. When they were pissed enough, they left when they wanted to, and they stayed when they wanted to, in spite of, quote unquote. And they stayed because it would have been written. Oh, and they stayed in spite of the intense work conditions. And she highlighted that Capricorn said that she had to go 5 days to take a lie detector, right, test. She's like, but nobody forced her to go. Can you prove that Mr. Combs actually had knowledge of this going on? Because she said, according to Capricorn's testimony, somebody else picked her up. Somebody named Philip, I do believe she said. So she said, prove that Mr. Combs sent him. Prove that Mr. Combs ordered the lie detector test. Prove that she was taken against her will. She would be picked up and dropped off every day. And when we asked her why would she go, because she said she was accused of stealing jewelry from jewelry from Mr. Combs, and she went and she stayed because it would have been written off as stolen. She didn't want anybody to think she actually stole the jewelry, so she went every day, according to her testimony, to take the lie detector test to prove her innocence. She said, other than that, her complaint was there was long work hours. And when we asked her what would be the punishment if you push back, she said he would threaten to fire us. Okay, you don't like it, you leave. That's what Alexandra was arguing, right? You don't like it, you don't like all. She says, and as a matter of fact, in Capricorn's lawsuit against Diddy in 2012, she charged him with wrong termination, Your Honor. She wanted to be there. Wrong termination is symbolic of you wanting to remain in the workplace. You didn't charge him with abuse. You didn't charge him with kidnapping. You didn't charge him with all of that stuff about a lie detector test. You charged Sean Combs Enterprise, the Combs Enterprise, with wrongful termination. Is that a RICO? Is that a racketeering? Is that forced labor under the Racketeering Act? I'm just telling you what they argued in court. She said, Your Honor, she stayed because she wanted to stay. And to be honest with you, her next job, she was hired as 50 Cent's manager. She was hired as 50 Cent's manager. So he didn't block her from the industry, she's saying, basically insinuating. He didn't blackball her because she went on to become 50 Cent's manager. And then she highlighted Mia. She says, Mia their testimonies were similar. There were long hours as it relates to the Combs Enterprise. There was verbal abuse. Mia cited physical abuse. She was suspended multiple times by Combs. And she said, Mia testified under oath, what would be the primary threat? Well, the primary threat, according to Mia, was Combs would threaten to fire her. She also goes back and cites Mia's testimony in the transcript as that this was her dream job. This was her dream job, being able to work for Combs Enterprise at Revolt, and that she was actually, quote unquote, upset that Diddy didn't want to be involved in her film anymore and dropped the project. And she says, Your Honor, she wasn't blocked from the industry. As a matter of fact, she later got a job working for Madonna. Working for Madonna. Now, do y'all see why I said the brilliance on both sides as it relates to the prosecution and the defense? They're all coming out swinging. They're all coming out swinging. Let's continue. They talked about kidnapping charge under the Racketeering Act. She says it's minimum, it's insufficient evidence, and it doesn't meet 2 of the 3 elements, requirements to charge him. So that's why you're seeing some of these things being dropped. There along said, not the material girl, living in a material world, because I am a material girl. If it's fitting, right? It's fitting. She also says there is no evidence. We talked about that Diddy knew that these things were happening as it relates to the liar detector test. Capricorn did not cite any other interactions with another individual. It's purely speculation. That everything these women have talked about is speculation. She says the government cannot prove without consent that Capricorn did not give her consent to be picked up every day, taken to wherever she was taken to take that lie detector test. They talked about Cassie. Now, this was a good example. I don't know why the defense used this one, because I feel like it worked against them. They utilized Cassie's when they talked about kidnapping, right? When Diddy was accused of, and he beat Cassie. You remember, many witnesses testified that she looked horrible. And it happened at the London hotel, the incident where the government is saying, listen, he held her, kidnapped her for several days, housed her up in the London hotel after a very, very brutal and violent attack. That's what the government is saying. So the defense, their rebuttal is, Your Honor, listen, can you prove that she was kidnapped? Because as a matter of fact, Miss Ventura testified under oath that she wanted to stay at his house and she wasn't allowed to remain in his home, and he offered her a hotel room. Now, on a integrity level, emotional level, I was uncomfortable with that example. But you know what? I'm not the one that makes the final decision. I was like, why in the hell would you use that example? This shows him as brutal, violent, a monster. But then I was like, this is not an emotional case, right? Hence the reason why we are here today with them dropping 3 of the charges. So I just thought that was a horrible example by the defense to utilize that. But at the end of the day, nobody cares what I think. They also talked about Kid Cudi. Alexandra Shapiro argued that, listen, even Cudi speculated that Diddy blew up his car, committed arson. He said, when I talked to Diddy, I think he's lying. She said, that's speculation. There's no solid evidence. He simply thought Combs was lying. That's not enough to charge Combs with what? Arson under the Racketeering Act. Okay, you thought he's lying. But can you prove? Y'all, I'm just giving you the rundown in court, but sometimes I put it in layman's terms so that you can understand. She's saying, okay, but can you prove that he actually blew your car up? You thinking that he's lying is not enough. Drop the charge. And the government dropped the charge. All right. Let me go to another key point that the defense was able to point out. So they began to focus on 2 racketeering acts, rejection, and they're wanting to reject motion 29, bribery under California law. They say in order to prove bribery, you have to offer the bribe to an individual who's about to give information to law enforcement. And then you would actually have to use criminal force or a criminal act to carry it out, right? So she's quoting federal law. And of course, she cited cases to back up her claim. She said this trial has confirmed that there is no evidence that Mr. Combs bribed or intended to harm a witness if they went against anything that they're claiming he said. They brought into evidence and they shifted their focus on a phone call that Mia testified about that she received in November of 2023, I do believe, where D-Rock called her. And Alexandra Shapiro focused on obstruction, which could have been a racketeering charge. She says there's 2 statutes that are at issue here. Number 1, you're stating that the defendant used intimidation to persuade the witness, Mia, right? To persuade her in some way. Number 2, you're saying that persuasion was motivated by improper purpose. The defendant has to have a consciousness of wrongdoing. So what they're saying is Mia testified that she got a call from D-Rock, and they said, Your Honor, hold on. She said her initial reaction is she was happy. She was happy to be speaking with them. It felt like old times again. It felt like she was a part of the family again. And it wasn't. Throughout that entire call, she was happy. She was elated until the end of the call when D-Rock mentioned, Cassie and Diddy, they always used to fight like that. And then she said her radar went off and she believed and she assumed that Mr. Combs would want her to testify in his favor, but he never said that, Your Honor. And as a matter of fact, she didn't answer his call when he called. So how can we charge him with bribery and or the obstruction of justice as it relates to racketeering when he didn't speak to her? Yeah, he called her over and over. And finally, he left her a message and said, Hey, listen, I'm calling your phone over and over. Please let me know. It's okay if you don't want to talk. We don't have to talk, but I don't want to bug you. I just wanted to call you to refresh my memory because you were my right-hand man during those times. And I can't remember all of the detail. And I just wanted to connect with you real quick. This is what the defense is arguing. How is that bribery? How is that obstruction of justice as it relates to racketeering? Mia gave no evidence, according to the defense, that supports the federal requirements. Mia testified that when she got a text from D-Rock, she was elated. She was happy to hear from him. And as I stated earlier, her radar only went off when D-Rock at the end of the call said, Puff and Cassie fought like a normal couple. There was no threat issue to her. Nobody said, you better say this, you better say that. Nobody. And all D-Rock said to her, according to the defense, is Puff wanted to speak to her. She interpreted that as he wants me to say something in his favor. Nobody told her that. And she didn't even answer the call. This is all subjective. There is no valid proof. I'm talking like I'm the defense, y'all. And as a matter of fact, Your Honor, Mia testified under oath that she pretended to go along. She played nice, but the whole time she had her own plan and she was just keeping them at bay and playing nice. She never communicated to them, I don't want you to call me. I don't want you to insinuate anything. I'm uncomfortable. I feel intimidated. I feel harassed. They then went on and they talked about Jane and they came to a similar conclusion regarding Jane. They said, listen, she sent him a text after Cassie's lawsuit dropped. She had a 40-minute phone call. Nothing in this conversation and it's a recorded conversation. There's nothing in this conversation that leads to corruption, persuasion, or that could interfere with federal proceedings. All he said is, what you need me to do to make you feel better. And Jane even testified under oath that he was the same way he's always been, dismissive. He didn't want to listen. Your Honor, that is not an attempt to obstruct justice. She said he never changed. She said he's the same old, same old. After all these months, here he come with the bullshit, talking like he always talked. Where is the intimidation? Where's the obstruction? Where's the racketeering? There is no sufficient evidence. I'm telling y'all how they did it yesterday, right? So then, let me make sure I got everything. Let's see what else. We talked about the forced labor and how the government was using the green card statute. And y'all, it's a very outdated statute that was related to immigrants that came to the US in the earlier days, where their employers, the people, the rich people that they would work for, would keep their passports, preventing them to leave, right? That's forced labor. That's kidnapping. And they're saying you can't use this law, a green card law, to apply to his personal sex life. Okay. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that for you all. Give me 1 second. Let me see what else we can go over, because many of you are wondering, you want to know the why. I'm giving you the legalities based on some examples that were given by the defense yesterday. And I know the entertainment part, and that's nice, but I want you to have a bit of facts so you can go ahead and chop it up the way you want to chop it up and run it down the way you want to run it down. Pretty much we've covered what the defense was able to do by way of their argument, which resulted in 3 charges being removed. They talked about sex trafficking with Cassie, and that the government failed to prove, and I could be saying it wrong, mens rea. And that's what they actually cited, that under oath, Cassie testified that she did the Freakoffs to make Combs happy. She didn't communicate that to him at the time. As a matter of fact, they pointed out her text messages were extremely explicit. But she didn't say during the time where it was most important, I'm only doing this to make you happy. I don't want to do this. Had she done that, according to the defense, then you would have had more of a solid argument for sex trafficking. They said that Cassie's text created dissent. What it did is show that they had a very toxic relationship, in addition to a very sexually explicit relationship, and Cassie failed to clearly communicate her unwillingness to move forward in that type of relationship in the future. The defense admits that he was violent. Thank you, defense. Now listen, I appreciate that. They said, was he violent? Absolutely. Was he vicious at times? Absolutely. This is a domestic violence case, not a sex trafficking case. Hold on, let me continue, because I want it to make sense. Is it making sense to y'all? Because I feel like if we connect the dots, you have a deeper understanding. That's why 3 of the charges were dropped for some of the examples that the defense argued on yesterday. And then they're saying, Your Honor, the government is arguing. They're asking, they're asking for fraud. They're saying Jane was she was frauded by benefit. You can't argue that because I didn't take you out, because I didn't take you on vacation, that that's fraud and coercion and sex trafficking. Couples have sex all the time and maybe too tired to go out to dinner. Listen, when I tell you the defense, baby, locked and loaded, I was sitting there, I was like, you damn right. My husband promised me, you know what? You sure right. He cheated me out some coochie. That nigga told me he was going to take me to State 48. You know what? When I get home, I'm raising hell. And as a matter of fact, I may go to the courthouse and press charges on his ass. If this is a law, If this is the law, hell no, I'm finna run straight to the courthouse. And that's what Alexandra said. She said, shit, Your Honor, come on now. Is this what we doing? We finna lock this man up because he didn't take her to Cabrone's Italian restaurant. She said, do you know how many couples? Well, so, ooh, if you do this, I'm going to do that, mama. Ooh, I'm going to do this, daddy. Oh, and fall asleep. You better ask some of these men because they may press charges on y'all. You know how they take you out for Valentine's Day and you say all that stuff you're going to do to your boyfriend and your baby daddy and your husband, and you in there snoring like a damn polar bear. Men may be able to press more charges now that we talking about it. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I want to go home back to Texas. Shit, the feds may be waiting on me because I'm for real, because I done cheated that man a couple of times. But that's what the defense argued, right? If that's the case, we all going to jail. Shit, we all going to jail. So they saying you can't say he defrauded her. Because she's also saying that she did it to make him happy. The evidence shows that she was willing. She was willing to have sex because of economic benefits. Now, that's a very, very strong point. A lot of women are. A lot of us do have sex for economic benefits, not to be confused with prostitution. Not to be confused with prostitution. Ladies, married ladies, can we talk? Mm-hmm. That pillow talk when you're done, baby. You know that bag I showed you? You get him while he hot, girl. You know that bracelet? Yeah, baby, I'm going to get you that bracelet. That's true. That's an economic benefit. Men, you be like, girl, you might get that car. You keep that up. What car? Stay in the light, baby. Me to say stay in the light. We staying in the light over here. But anywho, let me continue. Let me quit playing because I know some of you. But that's true. Very, very, very simple example. Now we're going to lock him up, Your Honor, because he fell asleep or she was too tired. So then they go on. They said, Jane willingly stayed sexually involved with Mr. Combs due to the economic benefit. There was no violence here. Throughout the 3 years that she was with him, there was no violence. This is what they argued. Until she introduced violence. Until she became the aggressor. They said the government is attempting to now align false promises as fraud to tie into coercion act. BS. So this is bullshit. What are we here for? Come on, Judge. Come on, Judge. I know a couple of times you done fell asleep and your wife was mad because she had to cook and you was going to take her out to Carmine's here in New York. If that's the case, you should be on the stand. They didn't say that. I'm being facetious. They said this is objective standard and it doesn't qualify. This is everyday behavior between romantic partners, and nobody ever accuses their husband, their wife, their baby daddy, or anybody of being fraudulent, defrauding them out of sex. And then we talked about relevancy versus sufficiency. We covered that. And then they went on to talk about Diddy, whether or not he would testify. Diddy was happy to talk, y'all. Diddy was happy to talk. Diddy stood up. I thought he sounded like he was in the studio. And first he tried to compliment the judge. And I made a note, the judge wasn't trying to hear that BS. He got straight to the point. Do you intend to testify? And we all held our breath. And Diddy spoke clearly that he did not. And hold on, the judge is very clear. This is not your lawyer's decision, your attorney's decision. This needs to be your decision. And I'm asking you to state for the record, have you made the decision to not testify? Explicitly, your own thinking, your own accord, and Diddy said, yes, I will not be testifying. I will not be testifying. Now, I made a note. At first, when the judge was asking him, "Are you sure that?" I was like, wait a minute. I kind of feel like the judge is like, don't you jump your ass on this stand. Boy, don't you jump on that stand. I made a note. I said, based on my interpretation, the judge clarifies this is his decision. Good move. And I wrote, good move. Those legal eagles would have told him, oh, Diddy, this ain't no rap game. They would have eaten you alive. You hear me? So, anyhow, the stipulation read by the defense, they entered Exhibit 2000, provided to the government, true, accurate records, Ventura provided to the government. Cassie stating that Cassie, they reiterated that Cassie stated her glee for Combs. I love you. You are not. Basically, what they did is they utilized Cassie's evidence against her as a character witness for Sean Combs. How much of a decent human being he is, how much she loves him, how much he puts up with her crazy. And she's in her communication to him, even though I'm real crazy. Let me read it so y'all don't think I'm lying. What she said is, I love you. I'm in love with you. I want you to be happy too. Hold on, where's the crazy part? And I put, Cassie's text reiterated positive attributes regarding his character. She says, I love you because you give me love. I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy, real crazy. And I owe you so much more. You're patient with me. You're kind to me. You treat me so well. You make me the best version of myself as a woman, so on and so forth. So the defense utilized her own words as a character statement to highlight even her as a victim, saying how nice he is outside of the physical abuse. Listen, I'm just telling you what's going down in the courthouse. They also entered into evidence Exhibit 2001, Daniel Phillip. Met 2 times with law enforcement agency. Watch this. Daniel Phillips, I don't know his nickname. I have to go back through my notes. He's an escort. The escort told the FBI that he felt jealous when Diddy would have sex with Cassie because he liked Cassie. And at one point during one of the Freakoffs, he was mad at Diddy because Diddy told him, move, it's my time. It's my turn now. You move. And Daniel Phillips said that made him jealous that Diddy was with Cassie. Then they entered Dawn Richard, that she met with law enforcement 7 times, and I can't remember what they were trying to hone in on. Sheree Hayes testified and shared with the FBI that he began to have feelings for Cassie. Capricorn Clark, this is what the defense is drawing out, met 13 times with the federals, with the federal agents, and 11 of the 13 meetings she never mentioned. This is what they said. She never mentioned that she called Lauren London at Kid Cudi's house. So they were poking holes, showing inconsistencies in what these witnesses were saying. You said this time, you said this time, and then all of a sudden you come up with this, what the defense is saying, a lie, or this weird ass behavior. Then they talk about Mia. Mia met with the feds. And in her initial meetings, Your Honor, she never, ever mentioned that she was sexually assaulted by Mr. Combs. Wouldn't you think that would be important for her to say? Wouldn't that be the first thing a victim would say? Thank God you're here. Thank God you're here. He sexually assaulted me. They're saying she met with him ample amount of times, and did not initially mention anything about sexual abuse. Then they go on and they talk about Bonna. They said, Your Honor, she had 8 meetings. 8 meetings with the feds. Not once did she mention that he said, I'm the devil and I'm going to kill you. Then they go on And that was it. I'm sorry. That was it after that. They did yeah, you know what? I'm gonna have to agree with somebody. When they talked about Cassie, somebody said that Stockholm syndrome. I agree with you. And I agree with you in that capacity. Let me tell you why. Because I just saw my note. This was after Cassie sent this 3 months later. No, this was a year later, almost a year later, after the incident at the Intercontinental Hotel. Keep that in mind. That very well could be Stockholm syndrome. Let's see. That's what that's how we got. So based on that, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are tuned in, y'all, that's how we got those three. That's how the defense was able to get the 3 charges dropped on the behalf of Sean Combs. Okay. Now, requested instruction number 2, payment not determinative. The government respectfully requests that the court instruct the jury that sex trafficking, labor, and payment to the victim for that conduct are not mutually exclusive. For sex trafficking, this instruction is crucial because of the fact pattern underlying Jane's trafficking by the defendant. As Jane testified around April 2023, the defendant and Jane entered into a multi-year love contract under which the defendant agreed to pay Jane's rent in the amount of $10,000 each month. Now, how is that different? Let me just ask y'all, because this is what the jury's going to be talking about, right? When they get into the deliberation room, they're going to say, how is that different than any other rich billionaire, any other rich man that has multiple women and pay their rent? How is that any different? Thank you. Gwendolyn says, great broadcast. I'm just asking you, because the jury, you represent the jury. Do you feel like, based on this, the jury is going to come to the final conclusion? Yeah, this is, you paid her rent, so you sex trafficked her. How many men in the audience have paid a woman's rent and you don't live with her, or has helped her with rent, and you probably had a sexual relationship with her? Anybody? I mean, and you feel like, hold on, wait a minute, I didn't know that could be considered sex trafficking. If I'm gonna help a woman out, I like her, we're mutually exclusive, the sex is good, we go out and we have dinner. Yeah, I like her a lot. I'm gonna help her out when I need to. Your government is the devil's P. Diddy, just a little devil. He can't be. Okay, never mind. Okay, don't do it like that. Now, tomorrow's Leader Sports says, I have and won't be paying no more after this. Don't do it like that now. Give her a heads up. At least get a lady a 90-day notice. Don't do that. Hold on now. Bruh. Oh, look, y'all for real about this. He said he's not going to pay no more rent. Hold on now. You're going to have to give these women a heads up. That's all I'm saying. Let's go back. For sex trafficking, this instruction is crucial. Because we talked about the rent. While that contract was in effect, and in part as a result of terms of that contract, the government alleges that Jane was trafficked. I don't know. That one, I'm gonna have to say, sit down somewhere. Is that all you got? Are you gonna use him paying her rent in alignment and tie that to sex trafficking? Wow. That's what they're saying. Hold on. That's what I'm reading it. That's what they're saying. Because jurors may be under the mistaken impression that someone cannot be coerced if they receive compensation in return, the government requests that the jury be instructed as to the law that payment alone does not preclude a finding of guilt as to sex trafficking. And then, of course, they cite the cases. Feel free to go and research and read it yourself. Because the forced labor victims also receive. Okay. As noted above, the defendant paid Jane's $10,000 per month rent, and similarly for Cassie's rent and other expenses. But how is that sex trafficking, and how can you prove that is against the law? That is what the government is going to be tasked with. And how do you convince the jury, particularly four bald white men in the jury, that should he decide as a single man, right? Let's keep it real, to engage with a younger, beautiful woman, and if he pays her rent and he's having sex with her and they're traveling all across the world and they decide to engage in any type of kink, threesomes, girl on girl, whatever, and at any point that she feels uncomfortable and feels sexually exploited, he could or may face federal time in prison. If you don't think those men in the jury are going to be thinking like that, you are crazy. You are crazy. This, they may not be able to get the jurors to charge him with sex trafficking, if that's what they're basing it on. If you're basing it on rent, that is going to be a very, very difficult argument to win, I'm going to assume, with the jury. And probably some women, maybe some of the younger women that are on the jury that have gotten their rent paid or have received nice gifts or nice behavior from men that they've loved and say, hold on, I don't consider myself a victim. Let's continue. Let's continue. In addition, as employees, Mia and Capricorn were paid salaries by the defendant's company. The jury may not intuitively understand that this payment does not preclude a guilty finding on forced labor. Requested instruction number 3, cumulative conduct. The government's proposed additional charge language instructing the defendant that they may consider a defendant's cumulative conduct is particularly necessary in this case for the jury to understand what it can consider in assessing whether Ms. Ventura was coerced. Throughout the trial, the government has introduced evidence not only of threats and harms directed at Ms. Ventura over a multi-year period by the defendant, but also the defendant's threats of abuse of others of which Ms. Ventura was aware. I think they're talking about Bona. Under the law, the jury may consider all of this conduct in assessing whether a victim was coerced. Hold on. And then they cite the case. However, without such an instruction, jurors may mistakenly believe that they are confined to considering a narrower category of evidence in deciding whether the elements of sex trafficking are met. The cumulative conduct and forced labor instruction is also important for Mia and Capricorn. Both worked for the defendant over long periods of time, and during their employment, the defendant was violent and threatened them. The cumulative effect of the violence and threats can all be considered by the jury in assessing whether either was forced to engage in labor services for the defendant. Without an instruction of this nature, jurors may feel they are constrained to consider only whether a particular act of violence or threat resulted in forced labor. This is going to be hard. Let me tell you why. And not because I think so. Because you have the other assistants that came and left on their own accord. They didn't like it and they left. Do you get what I'm saying? Some of which were white males. I don't like it here. It's crazy here. It's wild here. This is not my forte. This is not how I was raised. Y'all are weird. Y'all are wild. You black folks don't know how to act. Nigga, what? Oh, hell no. I'm up out of here. Hell no. Diddy is Diddying. Let me go back to my zip code, my tax bracket. Hell to the no. That's going to be tough because you have some that have testified, yeah, it was crazy, but I left. I wanted out. All that which you say is true. Nobody held me against my will. I got the hell up out of that circus. And then if you think about Brendan Paul's testimony, he said when he was onboarded by a lead assistant They said, what did he tell you? He said, get in and what? Get out. Get in and get out. Let's continue, and we are almost done. Okay, let's see. All right. All right. As the court is aware of key instances of physical restraint. Based on the cross-examination of Jane and Mia, the government respectfully requests that the court briefly instruct the jury that physical restraint is not required to establish sex trafficking and forced labor. Now, come on, government. They're saying, we want you to instruct them that, listen, a person can be held against their will without you touching them. No physical restraint, no physical harm, no physical threats. That can still be considered sex trafficking and forced labor. The door is not locked. They can walk out, but that can still be considered sex trafficking. Do you agree? Those of you that are in the audience, from what you know sex trafficking to be, with victims that go missing every day, when you see signs, have you seen him? Have you seen her? Last seen wearing a Hello Kitty hat. Help me find my daughter. Help me find my son. Are most of these victims usually taken by force? Because according to the government, they want to emphasize that physical restraint is not required to establish sex trafficking and forced labor. If that's the case, how come these kids that have gone missing and these women and men and boys have not returned home? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It's not that I agree or I disagree. I just would like you to show a little bit more respect for the intellect and the intelligence of the jurors. That's all I'm saying. I don't want you to think that these people that are sitting there receiving $6 an hour may not have any questions. I don't want you to assume that everybody that's sitting in that juror box are dumb. That's all I'm saying. Because if people aren't physically restrained and forced into sex trafficking, how come we cannot find all of these missing people? Let's continue. As this court is aware, one of the key instances of trafficking of Jane that the government intends to discuss at length in its closing, and which the government anticipates that the defense will also address in closing, involves the defendant's assault of and subsequent freak-off involving Jane in June of 2024. Now, here's my thing. I think that's a good example to argue. However, I think that if you're going to argue it, you have to say she initiated it. Right, wrong, or indifferent, she initiated. Teresa said, I need to be an attorney. During cross-examination about this incident, defense counsel extensively questioned Jane about times that she could have escaped on this date, asking Jane, does the back gate have a capability for you to leave the house, asking whether she has other family members in Los Angeles. Moreover, during today's Rule 29 motion, defense counsel again argued that Jane could not have been trafficked on this date because she could have left. Let me tell you what they're talking about. On June 18, 2024, after Jane slammed, according to her testimony, his head into a marble countertop with all of her might and punched him in the face and all of that, right? They moved on. She got dressed under his instruction, according to her testimony, to have a freak-off. Jane left the house, got in her car, and went to the front gate to let an escort in. That's what the defense was saying. She could have escaped. She could have left. She could have left. Was he with you in the car when you went to let the escort in? No. Did you tell the escort that you were attacked and that you had a physical fight with him? No. Is there a reason you didn't leave? Then drive straight to the police station. Remember, at this point, he was under federal investigation. The feds were already watching him. This was 7 months after Cassie's lawsuit dropped. Y'all don't remember? Make the wrong move, your ass going to jail. What they're trying to say is Jane didn't have to wait for this court date. Jane didn't have to wait because nobody knew all of this would be happening, right? She could have drove straight to the police station, according to the defense, and got his ass locked the fuck up. Excuse my language, but she didn't. Let's continue. And that's what the government is citing, that the defense asking whether she has family members, how come you didn't leave? And they said the defense is arguing that Jane could not have been trafficked on this date because she had access and freedom to move about the cabin, get in her car, drive to the front gate. Sex trafficking victims, according to the defense, you don't get to get in a car and go to a gate to let somebody else in. Because of the defense's lengthy cross-examination on this point and expected arguments at closing, and to avoid confusion, the government requests that a very brief instruction be added on this point that makes clear the legal import of this evidence. Similarly, during the cross of Mia and in Rule 29 in the Rule 29 argument today, the defense repeatedly argued that Mia could have left her job at any time and is therefore not a forced labor victim. That is incorrect under the law. Riviera 799F.3D at 185, affirming forced labor and sex trafficking convictions, even though victims once left the defendant but later returned. And the instruction is needed to correct any misimpression in the jurors' minds that Mia had an affirmative duty to leave. Now, my thing is, I think we have to be very careful in cases like this because you imply that women are deaf, dumb, and mute, and being a woman is a disability, and it's up to a man to interpret a woman's feelings. It's almost like going like The Handmaid's Tale, that we can't think and act for ourselves. It's up to you to know when she's uncomfortable. And even if she returns, she's still a victim. Even if she leaves you for 2 years and come back, you are still responsible. You are still responsible. Not only are you responsible for her, you're responsible for her employment. You're responsible for this. This is very complex as it reads, in my opinion. Are y'all following me? Because what are we doing? Similar, okay. And the instruction, okay. Let's go to sex trafficking. Requested instruction number 5, defendant need not receive thing of value. The government respectfully requests that the court add a single sentence to its charge on sex trafficking to clarify that the defendant need not be the person who receives the thing of value from the sex act. Okay, I think that's a good one. The government believes that this short instruction is necessary here due to the particular relationship between the parties, and the potential jurors will be influenced by preconceived misconceptions about trafficking that do not comport with the law as it will be explained to them. Now, here's the thing. That's an excellent point. Very good revision on the behalf of the government, in my opinion. In my opinion. Is this just a simple misdemeanor case, the prostitution? The solicitation of prostitution? I'm asking you all, yes or no? Requested instruction 6, commercial sex act need not occur. The government respectfully requests that the court add a very short instruction of reflecting the black letter law proposition that a completed commercial sex act is not required for a sex trafficking conviction. Without such a charge, a jury may incorrectly think that a commercial sex act must occur for a sex trafficking conviction. The phrase would be used to cause from the statute is not readily understandable for non-lawyers and may be misunderstood by the jurors as requiring that a commercial sex act result. Second, this law is relevant to the facts of this case. For example, as your honor is aware, one of the specific instances of alleged sex trafficking which the government has focused on during its case is the incident at the Intercontinental Hotel. The government has presented evidence that the defendant kicked and then dragged Ms. Ventura in the direction of a hotel room where an escort was standing by. and a freak-off had been in progress. A juror could reasonably find that, even though a commercial sex act did not occur immediately after the defendant attempted to drag Miss Ventura back to the room, the elements of this count were otherwise met at the time. Okay? Do you feel like that's a strong argument? Requested instruction number 7, reckless disregard. The government respectfully requests a more detailed reckless disregard instruction. The government anticipates that one of the key disputes as to counts 2 and 4 will be whether the defendant had the requisite knowledge that Jane and Miss Ventura felt forced into engaging in these commercial sex acts. While knowledge, quote unquote, a term people use in their everyday lives, is likely to be readily understandable to the jury, the government believes that additional explanation is needed to explain the term reckless disregard to the jury, a concept which non-lawyers are unlikely to have ever encountered. I think this is going to be very, very tricky, y'all. It's not. Let's continue. Conspiracy instruction. The government's proposal also requests certain additional language outlining the law on conspiracy. The current definition is only a few sentences long, and the government is concerned that it may leave open too many unanswered questions for jurors, which will result in a number of jury notes seeking clarification. It is imperative that the jury understands the law of conspiracy, a legal concept that is not intuitive, in order for them to correctly apply that law to the facts relevant to count 1, as well as the narcotics conspiracy predicate. The government has carefully gone through conspiracy instructions given in this circuit, and has only proposed adding that the language is directly relevant to issues in this case. The government is available at the conference to answer any questions the court has about why such instructions are necessary for the jury's understanding. And then they go on and they cite cases. And then they talk about the venue. I'm not going to go over all that. Unanimity. Hold on. The government has been able to find a single first sex trafficking and Mann Act case where, well, okay. That's it. So basically, I went over the meat and the potatoes and gave you the important components of the 3 charges that were dropped, and also the refined and revised instructions on the behalf of the government. Okay? Thank you for hanging in there with me. So Yvette, very good question. What are the charges now? Because from what I've seen, he's guilty of a couple of things that must be proven. So they're going back and they're refining their instruction to make it clear to the jury, because what they're saying is the law can be very confusing for non-lawyers. And because it's not upfront and in your face as a juror, there could be a misinterpretation and the jury could find him not guilty on many of these charges. Does that help for those of you that are tuned in? Oh, they're talking. Hey, mods, listen, do your thing. If anybody's disrespectful in my chat, they got to go. Yeah, we try to keep it. I mean, you can have your opinion here, y'all, but we keep it cool. Keep it cool. Be respectful. So I don't mind people disagreeing now. So hopefully what do you think? The outcome, guilty or not guilty? Do you feel like Diddy is going to do time? Do you feel like Diddy is going to do time? Listen, so TMZ and Mark Garagos, Diddy daddy lawyer, made this up? Let me tell you something. You have no idea how this game works. And I don't mean April in a bad way. Honey, everybody can say what they want to say. Leave out components or put them in. Leave out components or put them in. There is a freedom of speech. There is people get to run their platforms like they want to. There are no rules. There are no regulations. And I'm going to leave it there. I mind my business, but I keep my people up on game. That's it. That's all. And it may not be where I'll get the most views, but we are accurate as fuck over here. Do you understand what I'm saying? And we be well ahead of our time over here. I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you can take it and do what you'd like. And then you can put it up against some of this shit that you see that come out. And you'd be like, wait a minute. Very good question. And the fact of the matter is, there are no rules or regulations to how somebody commentates. And look, I ain't mad at them. Get your money, whatever you need to say, whomever. I don't care. I mind my own. You get what I'm saying? So there's no right or wrong in this game. There's no right or wrong. That's all I'm gonna say. Let me see. What was the question? That was a very good question. Thank you for asking. Look, I love everybody. That's all. The only people I compete with is myself. You get what I'm saying? So I love everybody. He got arrested? Tyrone Blackburn. Good, because he be lying. You lying. Did Tyrone get arrested, y'all? I've been on here with y'all. Can somebody send me the link? Yeah, he did lie. Now, Banna testified under oath that Tyrone Blackburn lied about her being sexually assaulted when she was not. Yep. When did he get oh, y'all think he's gonna get time served? 10 to 15. Thank you. I received that, Rolanda. DG says the instructions have to line up with the charges and what evidence was presented that supports the charges. When the evidence is lacking, the defense will routinely make these motions. Thank you, Innocent Instigator. She says, great job, Queen Sheba. You kept me pushing through work. Hey, it's my pleasure. Stay in the light, baby. Okay, Andre feels like 5 to 15 years likely for solicitation and some, but has to serve 33% down the 2 to 5 with rest on probation. And if Trump commutes in half, at least meaning, okay, got you. So you're thinking at most, okay, they're going to give him 5 to 15. He's going to get credit for time served. Anything left over, he's going to have to sit it out a year, 18 months, maybe 24. He'll be home by Christmas of 2026 or 2027. Got it. Oh, yeah. Yep. Okay, I'm going to be here. Do you feel comfortable sharing your thoughts on the outcome? I think I like Andre's. Do you feel... You know, the crazy part is sometimes you think you know and you have no idea. But after reading what the government proposed today with the instructions, clear, concise instructions, I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth with the jurors. I think it's a 50-50. Let me just say that. It could be 50-50. 50-50. Time was arrested for mowing down a process server. When? Like in his car? Oh, he's some kind of wonderful. That's crazy. Winter says solicitation isn't RICO. It makes no sense. Thank you. I'm headed to the courthouse. Ruth says you look amazing outside. Thank you. It's hot as hell. Court doesn't start until 2 p.m. Let me ask y'all something. And they're only going to be there for 3 hours. Should I go up there or just chill today? Thank you, Critical Thinker. Should I chill today or go up there and listen to what they talking about? Why am I asking y'all for permission to play hooky? Hold on. Andre's house says TMZ told us straight. People don't like the fact. Oh. Okay, I got you. Andre says, yeah, some of y'all are just upset because TMZ just said, listen, they dropped 3 charges and they didn't give you nothing else, but he's saying that's true. Andre is saying it's still the truth. Thank you, Linda. Linda says, good job. Thank you. All right, Discerning Goddess, thank you for the $5 super chat. Keeping Keep stating the facts, Queen. Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Candaloo, for the 10p. She says, so what charges is he still charged with? Okay, so I ran those down for you. Thank you, Belinda B1963, for the 10p super sticker. She says, Queen Sheba, awesome job. Thank you. I appreciate it. Judge Wood, I see you with the 5ps. Judge should not quote a case to the jury because that would be leading the jury to help with the government, in my opinion. Listen, child, there's a lot going on in that courtroom. Andre says, oh, you came back. The Rule 29 hasn't been ruled on yet. Yep. They're doing their charge conference today. Sonny say TMZ be lying. To Latrice, some of them other folks, listen. I'm going to go ahead and go up there. Okay, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and go up on y'all's behalf. Y'all say go ahead because y'all. All right, I got y'all. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go. I'm wearing shorts today. It's hot. Yeah, y'all are telling me to get my ass up and go. All right, Mocha Pam, thank you for the $5 super chat. Y'all said, no, ma'am, that's what you're there for. Let me go get me a little sandwich, and then I'm going to head to the courthouse. Ashley say, go for some lunch. Well, they be closed. I might get some lunch before I go, Ashley. That's what I'm going to do because everybody's outside right now, and it's hot. Diane say he trafficked those women and sold sex. Miss Virgo. No, I'm sorry. Miss Vertigo. 29, $5 super sticker. Thank you. You said, what charges are the feds keeping? And do you think he could walk? I think it's a 50-50. I think we're looking at 50-50. I think if the juror understands the clear instructions, if they're clear and they have no questions and they are clear and they have no doubts, it could be 50-50. I don't think it's going to be an overwhelming vote of guilty because even when I'm looking at it and one of the instructions was you could still be sex trafficked without physical restraint. Here's the problem. You're asking people to go against common sense. And based on what we see in the media and TV, and when we see these women and kids being taken by force, and they cite that as sex trafficking, and then you have these adult women that receive these economic benefits, mansions, trips, private jets, and say they weren't taken by force, but they were still sex trafficked. It can and it may cause confusion to some of the jurors based on what they know to be sex trafficking. The problem is, can you get them out of what they know to what you're trying to influence them to be open to? That's what the government is going to be tasked with, okay? Don't think like you. Think like how they're going to be thinking. That's not what I see on TV. That's not how I perceive sex trafficking. And will they feel good charging him with that if they don't believe that's truly the definition of sex trafficking? It's a lot. That's why I say 50-50. But they're not charging him. Diane says, but they're not charging him with that. That's the crazy part. Now, if anything, they should have, but they didn't. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate it. She says, thank you for everything you've been doing for us. Awesome job. It's my pleasure. He didn't sell it. He bought it. Correct. I love your reporting. Thank you, Miss C. Yeah, I'm going to go up there. Y'all tell me, get up there. All right. Yes, Queen, please go up there. Okay, I'm going to go up there. No, Sharika, they're not charging you with the men because, and I covered this yesterday. Or maybe I didn't. In my head, I covered it yesterday. With the men actually operated out of model agencies. Let me tell you how some of these model agencies are actually fronts for escorts and prostitution. Now you know. So when you see all these people, I'm a model. For who? I do print and ad work. I bet you do. I bet you do. I'm just saying, I'm putting y'all up on game. A lot of these model agencies, be careful what you signing these kids up with. Yes, ma'am. They sending these photos to the highest bidders. And they should be on trial too, in my opinion. In my opinion. So no, they're not going to be charged, the men. And there's women out there in these model agencies that are actually, it's a very sophisticated crime ring. There's so many parties, which I also believe the government is tiptoeing around that. Because if you're going to take him down, you better start going after some of these Hollywood model agencies and some of these people that process payments. That's what I said. This is way bigger than what we think. This is way deeper because you're going to take him down. Then I'm going to tell on everybody. Then get this one because she processed the payments. Robin Greenhill, TriStar. Mm-hmm. Yep. As a matter of fact, hold on. While we're on it, give me 1 second. Why are they protecting Robin Greenhill? Do y'all know? Some people feel like she's a white woman, and the government is doing everything. And some of the major media outlets have been called out for not. Is she a white woman? So Robin Greenhill, she's TriStar is listed as sports and entertainment business, right? No, yeah, if I'm correct. Hold on, let me make sure I get. Hold on, Robin Greenhill. She's director of services at TriStar Sports and Entertainment. She's a director. That's the money man right there, y'all. That's the one that be making sure everybody get paid. That's the one that when they entered an exhibit into evidence, it was Robin that sent an all-call email to Combs Enterprise to, hey, you need to send this amount, pay Jane Doe, pay this guy, pay that guy. And that's also the woman that's over or was over Britney Spears' conservatorship. Now, look, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole on her. Something I do very well because, Wendy Williams, I covered that. And Wendy Williams, her conservatorship, we don't really know who owns it. We don't know who's managing it because all of her files are sealed. It's under gag order. Now, we know who the attorney is, but Robin, I think you're involved, allegedly. I think you just may be the one over the Wendy Williams one. And I think people have gone to great lengths to seal that shit so that they won't be able to connect the dots of how many of these conservatorships. And maybe that's why those conservators, that attorney is doing everything she can to keep Wendy on lockdown while you move that lady money around. Allegedly. You see how when you start digging and you start looking at stuff and some of these big names, you be like, wait a minute, you was over Britney Spears, damn near, look, made it hell for her to get out. Making it hell for Wendy to get out. Does not some of this feel very familiar? Who's behaving like this? Who's over this? Can't be a different one now. I think Robin is. I would love to know. I could be wrong. It's just a question. Robin, is that you? Is that you, Robin? I'm just asking.
I don't care. I said what I said. I meant what I said.
I'm just saying. It was just a question. Traveling Gmaw, thank you for the $5 super chat. Is anyone else having a problem sending a super chat? It took 4 tries for me. Everybody send a super chat. Let's see if they come through. We can try it. Hold on. Y'all got it. Everybody try to send a super chat. Let's see what happens. Oh, man. All right. I think that's all. I'm going to head on up there. Hold on. I'll wait now. I like to have a good time with y'all. Not all at once. We're going to count it down. 5. Okay, Queen, since these charges were dropped, do you think they'll still have KK and D-Rock as it just depends. Okay, do y'all really want to know my thoughts or should I save them until the end of the trial? I don't want to taunt anything. or should I just wait until the end and do a big rundown at the end about what I really think is going on? Because I don't want to mess up nothing for nobody. You know what? I'm going to hold that
Money,
thought.
money, money, money comes to me, flowing effortlessly. Money, 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 money comes to me, comes to me. Money, 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 money comes to me, flowing effortlessly. Money, 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 money comes to me. Money, 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 money.
This is what I'm going to say. First of all, thank you all for the super chats. I appreciate it. Mocha Pam, thank you for the $5 super sticker. We appreciate you. We went over this one. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Critical Thinker 3, I think. Oh, thank you. You said have an iced chai latte. Thank you, honey, because it's hot out there, baby. I'm going to go get me something. Thank you. I appreciate it. Here we go. M. Mills, thank you for the $5 super sticker. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Traveling G-Moss. Anyone else? Okay, we got that one. Let's see. Rue, thank you for the $5 super sticker. We appreciate you. And look, a boxing for life coming through with a 20p and a pepper. Testing, LOL. Thanks for the coverage. My pleasure. Thank you. Y'all keep testing now. No, is it Monique? Nonique. Arson, thank you for the 10-piece and the pepper. Thanks for your commentary. Please do another panel with Armand. Oh, absolutely. If he invites me, I would love to. Absolutely. Y'all run over there and say, Armand, we want Queen Sheba back. Absolutely. Armand is awesome. He's awesome. I got to give props to him. Y'all know I like to argue, honey. But okay, so this is what I think. Oh, y'all are saying wait until the end? Okay, they told me not to tell y'all my true thoughts. These are my day ones now. They know how I get down. But for those of you that are new, they're telling me don't give it to you yet. I'm going to hold off. I almost said it too. I almost said it. Oh, thank you for those of you. I see I have what is it called? CashApp coming through. Thank you for sending Cash Apps. I appreciate it. I think we're good to go. Wait until the end. Okay, I got you, Tiffany. All right, everybody. That's all I got for you. I hope y'all enjoyed the morning segment. Let me go up there and see what the hell's going on in that courthouse. I'll be back. All right. All right. See you soon.
You all should be ashamed. How can you drink right after a funeral? Like this? Give me another one, then, Brady. Fred Sanford, you just left the house of the Lord, and now I'm in my house. All y'all ought to be ashamed drinking like a school of fish. My Bible says, be not drunk with wine. What does it say about scotch? Hey, listen, why'd you go someplace else? Why'd you go ugly up somebody else's house? Who you calling ugly, sucker? You.